Cool. So we're about at noon. I'm begin by welcome everybody, kind of situate us, and then I'm going to hand it over to our main event. Hi, everyone. My name is Don Saucier. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of the Teaching and Learning Center, and you've come to our professional development series. I imagine you didn't get me here by accident and probably are validated in me saying that because you got to the right spot, and that makes me happy. Our professional development series runs every Wednesday at noon to 1. It happens Zoom this year, and that makes it easier for us today because campus is physically closed. So this is a fun time. I'll remind you that our professional development series comes with the possibility of earning a certificate, either as a graduate teaching assistantship or as a staff or a faculty member. Noah, as always, or one of the TLC staff will drop that link into the chat. There's also the possibility for faculty members to become a TLC fellow, and the information for that is also available with the link that we will provide. But as I've mentioned before, one of the great things about being a TLC fellow is you get to present the professional development series next year. So it's a great way to kind of get your ideas about teacher out to the campus community. So today we have a wonderful event. Just to cue next week's event. Next week, Scott Finkeldye and his team will come and talk to us about Canvas and course video tips. A lot of the stuff that we do now, including today, are remote. And he'll provide some ways for us to get some awesome resources to help our students learn. But that's next week. Today, we've got a wonderful event for you. The title of today's event is Happy You, Healthy You, a new course to assist students' mental health and well-being. And Professor Jani is going to tell us all about that today. So without further ado, please help me welcome Professor Jani.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining on this very cold day, I'm sure. I am actually right now in Italy. I'm in a small town called Orvieto, where we have our Italian Studies Center. I'm here with 47 students and 2 other professors. So please pardon me if my Wi-Fi connection seems a little tricky. Italy is not the greatest place to be on a hill town for the Wi-Fi. So having said that, I welcome you all to this presentation. This is something that is very dear to my heart, and I really appreciate you all being here. I'm trying to move the slides, and now it's not moving. I don't know why it is. Okay, there you go. So today I'm going to cover very quickly a few things that I will share with you. I'm sure I have taught now 3 times, and it has received a great review from our students. They've really, really enjoyed it, and it has been very beneficial to them. I'm going to share the course details and topics that I have included, including positive psychology, mindfulness, and neuroscience, and some of the exercises. In fact, most of the exercises are based on these 3 aspects that I have researched. And then I will also share the activities and assignments that I actually also do with them. So they know that I'm also doing the same exercises they are doing to be happy and to be healthy. So, and then at the end, I'll share some of the outcomes. So that's my plan for today. I am an architect. I'm not a neuroscientist, nor am I a psychologist or a doctor. But as an architect, as a designer, as an educator, I am really interested in well-being, because designing architecture and spaces is about really providing well-being for the family, for the occupants and users. So why I got interested in is because I started noticing in our student body the anxiety level rising, the stress level, the depression, and varieties of mental health issue. And as you can see here, and I'm not going to read all of this, but it is a huge number. 80% of our students feel overwhelmed by their responsibility as students. 50% of them rated their mental health to be below average or poor. And so these are things that is really striking. And I started noticing that our discipline as such, architecture and design, is a very demanding academic program. And they are there 24/7 sometimes, not good. And we are trying to change that. And so these are some of the aspects that are very difficult to really think about. Also, 80% of the students report that they feel stress on a daily basis. That is really huge. And so these negative emotions that our students feel, that directly inputs into their mental health and well-being. And in fact, in varieties of different ways, it actually really is adding to their stress. So I have done a lot of research on mental health and well-being. Also, I teach this course from a diverse cultural perspective and diverse religious perspective, and how all those different aspects also contribute to well-being. So this is why I started doing this research, and I am trying to, I'm going to switch the mode so that I can actually see all of you. Okay. Suicide is becoming one of the largest or second leading cause of death among college students. And that really, really shocked me. How I came to the statistics was that I was working with our wounded warriors coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan with our graduate students, and their suicide rate was really high. And so I started researching more about the suicides. And this generation, the military deployment they had, actually was very shocking to research that they actually have died more on our soil than in combat. And so that actually generated this interest in understanding why. And then I started seeing this correlation between our students and their suicide rates. So the cost of healthcare is not cheap. We all know that. But hospitalization costs for mental health reasons in Kansas in 2014 was $167 million. And that was truly shocking for me. And this is not just about faculty members and students, it's our staff members, it's our larger community as such, all feel this stress and anxiety, and then last 2 years have just made that stress level go so much higher. And so these are varieties of different reasons our students feel stress, school, work, friends, family. And so in that larger sense, it's really important to understand if our minds are really full, or are we being mindful of understanding how we can provide drug-free ways of combating stress, anxiety, and other mental health issues. And so I wrote a grant a few years ago, a small USRG, our University Small Research Grant, to start understanding how to deal with this issue, and received that grant and started researching varieties of these aspects that I talked to you about. So I started doing literature reviews on mindfulness, positive psychology, and neuroscience. And during my research, I found out that mindfulness practice is considered to be now mainstream psychiatry treatment for reducing stress, anxiety, and depression. And so wanted to give you a little bit background. I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but mindfulness as a concept comes from Buddhist tradition. And it's the contemplative tradition, which talks about and really talks in larger sense, understanding the present moment, the present moment that I'm having with you. If I am being mindful of that, I will stay in that present moment and observe what I'm doing with you, and observe my thoughts and feelings without judging that to be good, bad, or ugly, and then let it pass through me. And that way I will gain that centeredness in my day. It's a learned behavior. Dalai Lama is the proponent of that. And then Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a very famous Vietnamese Buddhist monk, who has written many books on mindfulness and peace, is another very large proponent of mindfulness. And so it comes from the East, started in India and Nepal, Tibet, and that area, and it has now become a mainstream Western treatment in psychology. So I'm going to talk about what mindfulness is. And in that time, I want you to look at the bubbles that are generating on the screen. Try to select one bubble and focus on it without thinking about anything else, and see if you can keep your mind on that bubble for more than 1 second. So mindfulness starts from really the intentional focus on immediate experience, where you are, what you are doing, how you are feeling, and thinking about that thought without having to really judge if it is good feeling, bad feeling, or not. Are you feeling? It is about experiencing the stress levels and understanding your anxiety and depression and pain. You then ground yourself in that moment, and that moment by moment attention to your thought and sensation really starts happening in your brain, and your and the neuroscience research now suggests that that starts relaxing you, because our brain has the ability to sense our anxiety, or actually creates the anxiety and stress. And so the stress levels are rising because your cortisol level is increasing. And when your cortisol level increases, you start feeling this nervousness, then that becomes anxiety, and then it transfers into stress. So mindfulness actually helps in controlling that feeling of nervousness, feeling of anxiety and stress in varieties of different ways. First and foremost, it is about being in the present moment, and then really observing your thoughts. So let me ask you this question. Were you able to keep your attention while I was talking on one of the bubbles that you selected? Hopefully you were. But if not, that's not very uncommon. Most people cannot actually concentrate their mind on one thing. So mindfulness has a positive effect on physical health. And this is the literature review that I did for this research and to prepare for the course. I'm not going to read this through, but since 1982, people, psychologists and neurologists have been researching mindfulness as a concept for helping everyone with reducing stress and anxiety. So since 1982 to 2007, I looked into varieties of these literature resources, and I found out that mindfulness-based interventions have been found to reduce many forms of psychological distress. It helps in generalized anxiety disorder. It helps with depression reduction. It helps with social anxiety disorder, anger reduction, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which we basically know as ADHD. And varieties of scholars and researchers have written about this. These are very published information, and very good research papers are there to understand importance of mindfulness. And also varieties of different ways of looking at this research. So from mental health standpoint, from physical health standpoint. And so we have to really understand that mindfulness training can alter the default mode networks, including the midline prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, which supports self-awareness. And I'll show you a mind map in a minute. Then I interviewed varieties of psychologists and mindfulness practitioners to understand how to teach mindfulness practices to our students. And then I found John Kabat-Zinn, who is considered to be the foremost scholar on mindfulness, and who started Mindfulness Center in University of Massachusetts Medical School. And he came up with this MBSR as a treatment, which is called mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy. And in this mindfulness-based stress reduction therapy, he teaches how to breathe, how to balance yourself, how to do stress reduction activities, how to be aware of what you are feeling, and how to document those feelings, and how to pay attention to your body and your body sensations. So while I was almost finished getting ready to launch this course, pandemic happened, Black Lives Matter and varieties of very large impactful event happened, the flooding, and then coronavirus hit. And so our department decided that this was the course that should launch now rather than wait for the next year. And so I started offering this course in 2020. Mindfulness has been the major backbone of this course. And I literally looked into what are the stressors in our students' life. Is that travel restriction? Is this economy tanking? Is it state of rest of the world, contracting COVID, curfew restrictions, mental health, everything that they were experiencing. And that's when I started designing this course and offering this course in 2020. So this course was offered in summer as a 6 weeks course, 3 days a week, focused on developing strategies for happiness, health, and well-being. I created the course in this format where I wanted to create awareness about health and well-being, then develop their knowledge base based on scientific evidence, then provide them tools and techniques to control their stress and varieties of different stressors they have in their life to be happy and healthy, and assist students in developing specific strategy that is specific to them, not just generalized strategy. And so this really helped me also understand how to develop and deliver this course. And then I use varieties of different pedagogies from student-centered, project-based learning, experiential learning, flipped classroom, peer-to-peer learning, and social learning to really develop weekly assignments that they have to conduct on their own and at their own pace as well, because I don't want to push them to do something and create more stress for them. I gave them menus of assignments and activities that they can select from so that it becomes really personalized for them. I provided varieties of readings for them online, and then we discussed that in the classroom. And then students develop their own sets of routine for health and happiness. So to develop the knowledge base, as I talked about, varieties of things that I offer to them, there were TED Talks, there were readings, there were varieties of exercises. Then I would give them assignments that are based on critical thinking. So they really actually have to think about why they are doing what they are doing and how they are experiencing it. And then they would practice. So for example, if it is mindfulness meditation, I would actually teach them how to do that. And then they have to practice for that week. And that at the end of the week, they will have to reflect on how they feel. And class discussions were very heartwarming. Students were very, very open about who they are, what they want. So first assignment that I introduced was to know thyself, who they are and what they want, what are their values, how are they feeling, what they want to achieve, what are their goals. And as you see on the other side here, this is one of the students, and of course we are artists and designers, so we do this as sketches and writing together. And so this is one of the students' way of actually showing who she is. And different students did this in different ways. Some of them were very logical. Some of them were international students stuck in China or different countries. And so everybody was then showing this during the class time and talk about who they are so that everybody get to know each other and develop a community that way. And then I introduced another assignment called reflecting and documenting their values and health and happiness maps. And so here is another happiness map you see from a student. And they really understood. We do an exercise called Adjacency Diagram and Bubble Diagram. And so this is very similar to the bubble diagram. Bubble diagram is really about understanding the proximity of different spaces. And here, through this conceptual maps, they were actually trying to understand what is important to them, who is important to them, and why. So this health maps then really help them understand really their values, first and foremost, their strengths, and their why this is important to them. So documenting this was a very good way of starting them into thinking about their good health and well-being. Then I would start giving lectures on varieties of different philosophical, cultural, religious, and psychological traditions, starting from Buddha all the way to Seligman, who is known for starting the positive psychology as a treatment rather than just talking about negative issues. Then I would share TED Talks with them that they watch on their own time and review research papers, but then they come back after our second class and discuss about what they are reading, what they are seeing, how they are feeling. And that actually really became a wonderful way to create another community among themselves, but also to really share what they are learning. And they were learning from each other, so peer-to-peer learning really worked well. And then practice, every week I would give them assignments to do. And then next class period, they would also discuss the assignments and how they are actually being successful or not. I also introduced them to the psychologists, very famous ones, Mary Joda, Seligman, as I talked about, Baumeister and Peterson, who all have done wonderful work in positive psychology and actually have come up with exercises that students and anybody, not just students, anybody can do. And so that was wonderful for me to participate in, because I was doing every assignment the students were doing as well. So mindfulness practice improves emotion regulation and reduces stress based on really the neuroscience's understanding of our brain. The limbic system is where the emotions are stored. Our amygdala is where stress lives. And now actually they have pinpointed these different brain parts. And so we have to really understand that hippocampus is where our memories reside, and our prefrontal cortex is our thinking part. And so once you understand that, now psychologists, neurologists, and even Buddhist monks have worked together to understand how mindfulness reduces stress by attenuating connectivity between ACC and amygdala. And so now there are brain scans that you can actually see after, for example, mindfulness meditation, and how it reduces your stress and anxiety. I would also then share Dr. Kabat-Zinn and varieties of these scholars giving either TED Talk or lectures, and so that they have a basic understanding of what I'm talking about from neuroscience perspective, from positive psychology, and from mindfulness. And then I would also share these very informative aspect about mindfulness practice and the multitude effects of cognitive function, and how the brain processes this information and what happens during that process of exercising some of these positive psychology and neuroscience exercises. There are different levels of consciousness linked with different brainwave patterns. And so when you are meditative, your high alpha theta levels are activated. When you are in panic states, your beta levels are activated. So there are varieties of these things that are very interesting to learn about. But when students learn about it, they actually understand how they are feeling when these situations happen. So I also share these brain scans that I researched and found varieties of papers from. And so they can see themselves what happens in the brain. So when you are painting or writing or composing, in a way you are meditating, right? These are focused exercises you are doing. Your theta level is really affecting your creative subconscious. And so our students are all creative thinkers, and so that really makes sense to them. And of course, they are very visual learners as well. So these big brain scans really help them understand how this works. I also shared with them the research on mindfulness meditation practice and how it affects the brain and what happens in our brain during that time. So just 20 minutes a day can really change your perspective on life and why. So I, based on Kabat-Zinn's practice of body scan, mindfulness seeing, mindfulness listening, mindfulness breathing, 5 sense exercises, then I also assign another exercise called mindfulness eating, mindful eating. And so that directly goes back to the well-being exercise part of it. And so I also give them our KSU counseling center is offering now mindfulness classes. So I also connect them to that so that they can continue practicing this later on. And then I also introduce concepts of forest bathing, mindfulness walk, and mindfulness eating, as I said earlier, and then give them information, scientific information on how that impacts them so that they can actually understand why they are doing what they are doing, how it is going to improve their health and happiness. Then I introduce them the concept of well-being and what it means. And it's a state in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to this, to his or her community. So there are 7 principles of well-being. There's a social well-being, physical well-being, cultural well-being, environmental well-being, occupational well-being, financial well-being, and I actually each of them we discuss in class and also provide information for reading and TED Talks on each one of them. I also introduce a new concept called whole person plus well-being, which is called SPIRE, which translate to spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional well-being, and the principles of that. So then once they have this basic knowledge about what health and well-being means, then we start doing exercises. So to practice well-being rituals, they have to actually learn to sleep well, at least 8 hours a day, which is almost impossible in our particular major that they are in. But I really actually show them scientific information about how sleep is important to memory generation, for healing of your body, and varieties of these different things. Bathing ritual and how that relaxes your body, massage, and then cooking healthy food, and then tea and coffee rituals. I also introduce them to acupuncture, aromatherapy, acupressure, art therapy. They learn about Ayurveda concepts. And based on their interest in these therapies, they select the therapies that they really want to pursue further. So this was one of the practice. They actually have to not only make a healthy dinner, but also have to share the recipe with other classmates. And this became a very fun part where they are sharing recipes and taking photographs and creating varieties of nice ways to share it with others. So again, that became a creative thing for them. And then they actually would share the meal prep and how to cook these recipes. So another part of practice comes from the physical size of well-being. And there is now research very clearly documenting physical health depends on your exercise. So I introduce them to yoga, walking and running, Zumba, Tai Chi, Pilates, or any other physical exercise that they want to do. And then I also introduce Build Well to Live Well movement and global wellness, and how it really impacts, as architects and designers ourselves, we have to really think about that. And so there are varieties of these different aspects of designing for well-being and wellness that I also introduce. For their emotional health and well-being, they actually have to think about air quality and water quality, light. For their sensorial experiences, they have to understand temperature control, colors, materials, textures, aromas, sounds, in view of nature, and how it impacts our health and well-being. So students call that a happy meal, and they select what they want to create for their lunch and breakfast and dinner, and then they share it with other students. So these are some of the lunches, breakfasts, and dinners they've made. And as you can tell, they really actually took this very seriously and really created a recipe book so that we can share it with each other. Physical exercise was a big thing for our students. They generally typically don't have time, so they had to really make time to do this. And some of them really enjoyed doing varieties of different exercises. Tai Chi, Pilates, and yoga was new for some of them. And they all very open-mindedly done these exercises, and then they selected if they like it or not and continue or not. They also had their own rituals to select from. Some of them selected the bathing ritual, some of them unselected sleep ritual. And so everybody had to do sleep ritual. That was not an option because I was trying to teach them why sleep is important. But all other rituals they can select on their own. And then major part of this course was reflection and documenting their reflection. So they had a journal that they reflected on the readings they are reading, the TED Talks videos and other things that I was assigning them to see and reflect on. And then also reflect on the impact of the activities and assignments they were doing. So this is one of the students' journal page. And then some of the exercises that came from mindfulness and positive psychologies or waking up with a smile. This is really something that changes your day. And this is proven scientifically in varieties of different research papers. Breathing exercises are the largest, most quickest thing that you can do to reduce your anxiety and stress. It takes just 5 minutes to control your nervous system and increasing oxygen level in your body. And that is directly related to cortisol level reduction. Mindfulness meditation is another aspect that I teach them. Mindfulness walk, and then tea ritual or coffee ritual if you are a coffee drinker. And then these are different other aspects that they practice. So I am almost at the end of my presentation. Students really enjoyed these classes, understand who they are, what their values are, why it is important to actually think about their own well-being and health and happiness, and how they can control some of the depression, stress and anxiety levels that they have. And so these are some of the thank you letters that I received, and I keep receiving these letters even after they graduate. And so these are some of the aspects that I want to share with you. I will not read them. I am going to send this presentation to Ornette, so you'll be able to see it. But receive and how it has impacted their lives and how it has changed their attitude levels, their practice level, and their health and happiness. So to me, this is one of the best classes I teach to help our students. And I wanted to share it with you because this class is open to all university students, and any of your students can take it, including yourself. If you wanted to take it, it is open for you to take it. These are very specific goal, and 6 weeks is very quick turnaround time. So it's a lot of work, but they really enjoy doing the work, and they take it really very seriously. I also develop very engaging presentation and related information so it doesn't seem boring. Reading is a lost art, and I have to entice them to read because I can't always discuss everything I'm giving them as an information, especially from neuroscience and positive psychology side of it. But they really actually read it and reflect it in their writing. I provide varieties of information, tools, technologies, and materials needed for them to be successful. And I become a role model. I actually do everything I'm asking them to do as well, which for me, and Professor Vic Four is here, I can see her, so she knows that I do a lot. So, and for me to say the same thing to them as like sleep 8 hours and sleep 8 hours myself is something that I also had to learn to really abide by. So these are varieties of ways I also improve my own happiness and health. And sharing this research actually really gives me a lot of happiness myself. So these are some of the aspects that I wanted to share with you. I know that you might have questions, and I wanted to leave time for questions. So at this point, I would thank you for your attention and open it for questions. This is like my class. Nobody wants to say anything or ask anything.
I've got a question, Viva.
Yes.
Depending on what kind of situation you came from in your family of origin, your class might be the first time some of your students have gotten really attentive messaging of like, you're worth it to take care of these things for you. And I'm wondering if that kind of realization either created resistance and participation to your class, or if you had to build in time to unpack some of that.
So Leslie, and she's my colleague, so I know her. Actually speaking, they really wanted to take this class because they have these issues and have been taking medications for it, and were tired of having these medical changes that the body goes through because of the medications. So I didn't have resistance at all. This is an elective. They don't have to take this class at all. And it's amazing that it fills up right away. I mean, people wait to get this class. And we have talked about offering this to the first year level for our freshmen, because this is such an important thing to learn upfront in your college career. But I also tell them upfront that I will love them unconditionally, regardless of how they feel about doing work or not doing work, right? But they were there because they wanted to be there. This is not a required course. So there is no resistance, actually. And in fact, they are being so honest in their journals. So if they don't like something, they say that. But I didn't like this box breathing technique, but I find 7 different types of breathing. And that's fine with me because it's anyway about them, not about me, right? So they have to personalize these routines for themselves. And so I give them that ability. I actually literally offer them menu of activities that they select.
Viva, this is LaBarbara here. I'm curious.
Hello.
Yeah, another one of your colleagues. I'm curious to know what the diversity in that class was like. How many of what kind of students and which colleges did you find take the class itself? And then I have another question. So why don't you answer that one first?
Yeah, so LaBarbara, the first 2 times it was just offered for our college.
Okay.
So it is from all the disciplines from our college. We are working on trying to get it open for everybody at the university level now, but it has to go through the educational council and all that.
Sure.
But it will be open for everyone. So there's a diverse body of students. We have students from China, we have students from Mexico, we have students from varieties of different countries, and also from here, African Americans, Latin Americans. So yeah, it was very diverse class.
Okay, I thinking more about my own lectures a couple of years ago on Mind, Body, Spirit. I want to ask you a question about sleep patterns. When I looked up the sleep patterns of other countries, I found literature that suggested that we were one of the few countries who insist on 8 hours straight of sleep, which you've admitted most of us don't actually get, that there was a different model of 4-hour break, 4 hours again, or 3 hours. Did you find that also in the literature that you were reviewing?
So REM sleep is the most important part, where you are in the deep sleep period. And so nobody sleeps 8 hours straight, right? So that is a myth that I also want to debunk, that we don't really sleep 8 hours straight. So there are different levels of sleep. Our ideal goal is to get into that deep sleep where you really rest and rejuvenate. And that is the time, actually now scientists have timed which time of night when that happens. So between 10 to 3 is the time when your body literally regenerates and heals. So I'm a night owl and I had to learn to go to sleep by 10 o'clock. But so you are very right. And so when I said 8 hours, in that larger sense, I was trying to say chunk of time to sleep, because first of all, falling off to sleep is not easy for some of us. And then once you start getting to sleep mode, there are different levels of sleep that you have to actually go through to get to the REM sleep. That is the most important part of it. In fact, I have worked for a Ford Motor Company as an architect and designer, and the engineers were taught to take power naps, 20-minute power naps. And that is also very refreshing and very important.
Yes. Yeah, and I've heard that 1.5 hours is about that juncture where REM sleep can occur, but not everyone is on that cycle. I mean, as you said, you want to know your body well enough to know what your cycle is. And I thought that was really quite telling. Thank you.
Dr. Jani, I have a...
Naps are very important. Go ahead, sorry.
So Dr. Jani, first of all, I wanted just to kind of, we're in the discussion mode. I wondered if you'd consider stopping your share so we could actually kind of have that more of a picture of seeing each other as we have this conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
There are some questions in the chat I wanted to bring up to the conversation. And if any of you are in a position where you can't unmute, drop it in the chat and I'll bring it into the conversation. So one of the questions is, have you heard back from any students who have graduated and been able to use this learning during their first jobs?
So in fact, this is very funny that you asked that question. And just a few days ago, one of the students wrote back to me. She is now in practice. And she said, can you share the sprouted bean salad recipe you gave us during the class? I have somehow misplaced it. And I would like to get back into the healthy eating routine. So I want to make that. And that was like, oh my gosh, they were actually really thinking and absorbing what I was telling them. So yes, they have.
Another question, and the question that the person asked immediately made me think of my yoga practice. They said they've tried meditation before and find themselves struggling with feeling awkward and silly. I've been there, as well as struggling to keep their focus on the meditation. Any recommendations to move past this mindset?
So first and foremost, there is also this whole idea of just sitting there and meditating. Meditation can come in varieties of different ways. For example, for me, singing is a meditation. Writing is a meditation. Designing is a meditation. Painting is a meditation. Meditation is really about focusing. And so in any which way you can focus yourself so that you forget about everything else and you are one with what you are doing, that's your meditation. So don't feel awkward and silly. If that is not your thing, find something that is your passion, that where you can lose yourself and be one with what you're doing. So another thing that I do is walking meditation. For me, it's very important to be in nature. And I go into the woods, and that's my forest bathing time, which is a Japanese concept. And that's my meditation. I'm one with nature. I'm one with trees. I'm one with the lake. And literally, I forget about where I am, what am I doing, and I am meditating. So that is something I wanted to share with you. The other part of that is that a lot of people feel silly sitting there doing nothing. But there comes a time period, if you want to do this kind of concentration meditation, you can also use a mantra that can really help you. So it doesn't have to be Sanskrit. It could be anything. Or you can focus on a point and not give up your point. So in my case, I, like you, had very hard times sometimes just concentrating. So my thing is nature. So I would concentrate on a bird or a flower or a tree, and that helps me focus and stay within that framework. So really, it is just find things that can work for you.
So the person who asked that question found your answer very helpful, and thanks you for that perspective. Another person said that they used to struggle with those things, and that one of the teachers had told her that losing focus and bringing it back is the practice, that's the point. And that helped the person to see it as a way to train themselves to cut down distractions, which is a skill they can apply to working, writing, etc. And that helped them feel less silly too. Another question we have in the chat for you is, what kinds of feedback did you get from specific exercises? Did the students find them to improve their well-being? If so, which exercises did your students find the most beneficial?
So let me tell you, sleep ritual was the best exercise I could have ever prescribed. Everybody loved it. They really loved varieties of different exercises, actually. One of the exercises that they really loved was also selecting their own physical routine. So some of them started walking their dogs and loved it. Some of them started running again and get back into the rhythm and finding that oneness in running, and they loved it. Some of them really, really loved cooking, and that was their love language, and they cooked for their family, and that brought the family together. In fact, what was really very funny was to see that their parents were taking the class with them. And you can see them sitting next to them and doing these exercises with them. And I was like, that made me the most happiest, because now it actually moved from just them to their family, which is the most important part, because that becomes a support system.
I think that's really cool that the families got involved in that. I would imagine that would increase the success of the stuff you were trying to do. Another question we have is, do you more frequently run into having to report concerning self-disclosures in the students' reflections? And how do you navigate that as an instructor?
In the sense of not sharing with others?
I'm wondering if, and this is my interpretation, if as mandatory reporters, if there are more things that we would then have to mandatorily report in these kinds of reflections. But if that's not the case, then the questioner can add in a clarification. But I'm wondering how you might respond to that.
So I didn't have any cases where I had to report somebody because what they were writing, but they were very, very, very open about the past struggles and what they had to go through. Some of them were suicidal, for example, had taken breaks from school, and all those things. So I actually knew what the situation was and why they were there in the first place. So I didn't have to really report, because none of them were writing about current situation. They wrote about what they went through before and why they are here. But I would,
sorry.
I would, if I found somebody to be that seriously ill, I would definitely report it.
So to follow up, I have a couple of questions, because I think this is amazing. This is an amazing course. You're doing amazing things with your students. And the two questions I kind of have, the first is, what was most challenging about this whole endeavor for you? And then the second is, I'm not going to have the opportunity to teach this course, right? And my students aren't going to have the opportunity necessarily to take the course. What can I do in my courses at a scalable level that would help me? So kind of what was challenging and what can I do are my two questions.
Challenging is the time. It's just 6 weeks. And second part is it's an elective, so not everybody can take it. So those are the two challenging parts. And the third most challenging part is to really keep doing research, because this course cannot be taught on old knowledge. Neuroscience is really very quickly changing the way we know about our bodies and our pain and our suffering. So I have to keep up with the neuroscience people, and they are working much faster than I can. So I have to tell them that I don't know everything, but this is the current research that I know about. and I will share as soon as something new comes up. So that is the most challenging part, but that is what I love because I love learning. So for me, that's actually a good challenge to have. To scale this course for yourself, few things that you can do, which I do with my students here right now. And that is start with breathing exercise. This is nothing as religious or any connotation whatsoever. It's purely neuroscience and psychology. And so start with breathing exercises, and I can do that with you right at this moment. Let's do this. Close your eyes for a second or two. And when I count and say, take breath in, take the breath in and then hold, and then I'll tell you to release it. You'll see in like 5 times of practice, you will see the difference. Okay, are you all ready? All right, take your breath in, hold, 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 release. 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 Open your eyes. How does that feel? It changes the energy very quickly. And that helps them too.
Viva, in reference to that, you fell right in time with the question that I had. I know that some of the breathing exercises, especially breathing, can occur in your electronic, devices, like Apple has a program, I assume others do. Did you find that your students either had taken advantage of those programs that were there, or are they ignoring them and doing what you've suggested, or did they continue to use those programs?
Actually, some of them, yeah. So some of them use the breathing technique, some of them use the mindfulness. There are varieties of different mindfulness apps, and they've used that. And some of them actually needed that reminder to breathe that comes from iPad and iPhones and varieties of different, and that was really helpful to them. And so they have been really very present and understanding when their breathing pattern was off the kilt. And really, these apps and technology really helps. To answer Dr. Sausier's question, furthermore, I actually made them do a happiness box development exercise. So ours are makers, so they would make a box which then stays on their table in their studios. And these are things that they can look at and use during the day to be happy. So photographs of their family or dog, or good healthy snack, water bottle. So varieties of these things that they can decide their own happiness tool in this box, but keep it right at the desk. And that was also very useful to them. So sleep ritual, breathing ritual, food ritual, because our students also they are so scheduled that they actually don't have lunch hour at all. And so a healthy snack and healthy meals were the most popular. And you can tell any of your students they can do this. And I don't have to teach that. They can actually learn it very quickly.
So Dr. Jani, by the way, lots of people are saying wonderful things about your talk. They've really gotten a lot of it and they appreciate you being here, as do I. Another question that a questioner in the chat had is, they're curious if you've considered measuring emotional intelligence scores of your students before and after taking your course.
I have actually thought about it, but I did not put that in my IRB. So I will have to revise the IRB to do that. But that would be really a wonderful thing to be able to do it.
Sorry, I was muted in the background because, my house, as many of you might have kids running around. They started to use all the echo dots all over my house to announce to each other. It was kind of fun. So, and that kind of leads to my next question is, as instructors, I mean, sometimes we spend a lot of time, concerned about the well-being of our students, which is absolutely phenomenal, but our own well-being, our own situations. So I wonder if you have some kind of brief tips for each of us, real specific things that we might be able to do on a day-to-day basis, real easy stuff to remember to help ourselves be in a position to be able to help our students.
So actually, our another colleague, Ms. Croce, is also on this thing, and I'm in Italy with her. She's our director of Italian Studies program. And we all have made this comment. There are 3 colleagues of mine here, 2 professors from my college who are here with me. And just sitting down and having a cup of tea or coffee with your colleagues at the end of the day really, really helps in just winding down. And it doesn't have to be your colleague. You could be doing that with your friends, or just being in the sun and take a moment to enjoy the day. The snow, for right now, for example, we don't like it because it makes our day really go off the kilter. But if you just take few moments to enjoy something that you do, may that be listening to music. For me, music is my life source. It's my salvation. And just listening or singing. So I'm always humming, but whatever that makes you happy, do that. Take time to do that. Just 10 minutes. And it will change your happiness scale in no time. And it's just 10 minutes out of your day. So yesterday, one of the colleagues made this comment that we schedule ourselves so much in the US that sometimes we even schedule meetings with our spouses. And coming here, sitting down and drinking this cup of coffee and looking at the sun and basking in the sun for 10 minutes. Why is this so difficult to do in the US, which is not so difficult to do here? Because it's cultural. This culture actually gives you permission to take time for yourself. And so that is what something we all have to really remember to do for ourselves, because after all, there's one life we have, and it's our body that we are putting through stress.
So I think you had mentioned this at the beginning, but there's also definitely some hope that you'll share the PowerPoint with us so that people can have these wonderful resources
Absolutely.
for themselves. Another person said, again, kind of talking about the great stuff they're taking from this, said it'd be nice if there was some sort of requirement or offer of this kind of class for tenure track faculty, folks interested in administrative positions, et cetera, or a university recognized / celebrated practice of the thing you're talking about right now. And then the person said they're going to start doing some of these things themselves. So I think this is, kind of a great point. We're right about at the end of time. This has been fantastic. I think I'm much happier having been here today, having heard about some of the stuff that you talked about. It's definitely given some goals for myself and my students. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to offer us before we conclude?
Well, thank you so very much. I truly, truly enjoyed sharing this course with you. I'm happy to help any of you if you wanted to have me do a presentation for your students. I do, as you saw, in 30 minutes, I can actually pack a lot of information for them. And I'm happy to do that with anybody who is interested in introducing this to their students. And truly, truly grateful to be here and very happy to see some of my colleagues here and 2 of my adopted children who are also here, Avantika and Rohan. They are both, Avantika just graduated, but Rohan is in our mechanical engineering department doing PhD. So as you can see, it's a full circle. And I'm very glad that as a family, we are together to really consider happiness and health of our own self, our families, but also our students. I think that's very important. And so is extremely important about our faculty and staff and our colleagues who also may be going through stress levels that we don't know. So thank you so very much. I'm very happy to see you all. And I hope that some of these things will stay with you a little longer than just today, and you will practice some of these things in your lives too. And yes, I would love to offer this course for faculty and staff and administrators.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jani. That was wonderful.
Bye. Have a great
I'd like to
day.
remind you all, we'll have the opportunity to post-event survey on this. We have our professional development series every Wednesday at noon. We had a wonderful event today. We got wonderful events coming up. Next week, we've got Scott Finkeldye and his team talking to us about Canvas and course video tips. We can't wait to see you all then. Till then, I hope you enjoy the snow.